Hold it. Ready. Leave it to me. Your job, Shield flash.
Hey everyone, Steve here, and in this video I'll be unboxing and taking a look at the pop-in music controller for the Sega Dreamcast. Now I don't know much about these games at all, but if you haven't heard of them, the pop-in music franchise is a rhythm game series made by the Bemani team from Konami, who also make DDR, Beatmania, Drummania, and you get the idea. In essence, it's a scrolling rhythm game with a lot of colored buttons that you have to press in time with the scrolling notes. The game has come out on a few different platforms, but the Dreamcast version with this controller seems to be a Japanese exclusive from what I can find on the internet. In terms of seeing what this controller works with, the most appropriate test would be the pop-in music Dreamcast games, but as I would have shown you in the intro, you can use it with other games too. So after unboxing it from its colorful packaging and having a look at the Japanese manual, which I can't really read, I put it into the Dreamcast and I knew that it would work with other Dreamcast games because when you go right into the menu, you're able to navigate and enter and exit menus. So essentially that confirms that this is basically a normal Dreamcast controller with just a different layout and buttons that aren't really labeled as a normal Dreamcast controller. Once you get inside the pop-in music games themselves, navigation in the menus is helpfully labeled to match the controller that you're using. Now, a quick note about the game itself, I found it to be honestly quite a bit weird. The songs that I played weren't that catchy to me and they had a few different sound and vocal effects that I thought were kind of funny. And the visuals are really 90s and funky, which is cool if you're into that sort of thing, but overall with my modern sensibilities, it did seem a bit weird. Now as for the experience with the controller itself, the buttons here don't really feel that great to press. There isn't much tactile feedback, there's a real shallow plunge when you're pressing each of the buttons, and there isn't any real click to let you know that, you've done a successful press. The controller itself is quite small relative to what you would expect, and it's comfortable to use given how big the buttons are. I think if you're a fan of the pop-in music franchise in general, and you want to be a complete collector, then the Dreamcast version with this controller is probably something you'd want to pick up, but I'm not sure how it stands up amongst fans as a port and whether or not it contains any of the iconic songs that they would be looking for. So after a few goes using this controller for its intended purpose, I thought it was time for something else. And given that this is an all button, kind of keyboard style arcade controller, to me that's just a HitBox / button box in disguise. So it's time for some Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So thankfully loading up the game, this controller all basically works fine, and this being a fighting game, it lets you easily change the button mappings, which is great. The way that you use this controller is that the 4 buttons on the very left are your directions, and given that they're not really laid out like a D-pad properly, you have to use them at a bit of an angle and just kind of remember which one's up, down, left and right. The remaining 5 buttons on the right are your action buttons. I'm not going to say how the buttons are mapped because A, I don't really remember, and B, it doesn't really matter for the most part as long as you experiment and learn how to navigate the menus when you're not in game. However, the keen-eyed among you will note that the Dreamcast has 6 action buttons, the 4 face buttons and the 2 triggers. So you're going to be missing a button here, and you're going to have to make a call yourself which is going to be the least important. For me, playing Marvel vs. Capcom 2, I can go without the weakest kick or something like that, so long as I have my 2 partner buttons, all my punches and the 2 other kicks. So I found that with enough practice, you can basically do everything on this controller that you've always done in fighting games. There's a mechanic in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 where you have to mash the action buttons during some supers, and that's actually pretty fun using this big controller. But of course, the same lack of tactile feedback that I got with the pop-in music games is felt here in fighting games, and that kind of sucks when you're trying to execute specific inputs. I have to say that if anyone had this controller back in the day and they used it this way for fighting games, then I think I gotta give a shout out because they were way ahead of their time. And given the popularity of button boxes now, then they had the foresight to see how much fun it would be to use these. Anyways guys, that's it for now. I hope all this info is helpful for people interested in the pop-in music Dreamcast controller. If you liked the video, a subscribe and a thumbs up would be great. I'd love to chat and answer anything I can in the comments below, and there's a lot more to see on my channel, so I hope you stick around. Thanks for watching, see ya.